It's time to talk about flags. I have held back on public comment on this previously because I don't think that the noise of the public debate is very helpful. But there has been another local press story on it this week and a lot of comment because of a recent arrest that's happened. So it's time, let's get into it. I'm Stacey Hart. I'm one of the Borough Councillors for Hatch Warren and Beggarwood Ward. I'm the election candidate for the Hampshire County Council Basingstoke South West Division and leader of the All In Party. I'm going to talk a bit about my feelings personally on the flags, address the different reactions that people have to them, some of what the people driving the campaign have said and done, and a bit about what I have done on this as a borough councillor and what I and the All In Party would do given further opportunity. I personally have very mixed emotional response to the Union Jack and the St George's Cross. On the one hand, it's incredibly positive. I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to live and work and serve my community here. My dad served our armed forces under that flag. On the other hand, I grew up in a time when that flag was heavily associated with the BNP, with racism, with threats and violence and abuse, and I carried the feelings that left me with. I am a white woman who has the privilege of never having been racially abused. That is not something I have ever had or will ever have to contend with on a personal level. But even as a child, I felt threatened by the sorts of people who did espouse those views. And growing up, and to this day, I have in part associated our flags with that, with nationalist imagery. As an adult, I understand elements of why I feel that way. Aside from my discomfort with those feelings, my anti-racist beliefs, there is also a correlation with the sorts of people who threaten and abuse anyone who isn't white and those people who threaten and abuse women. So if I, as a white woman, find that association uncomfortable and threatening, I can only imagine how deeply upsetting and traumatizing it might be for people who have suffered from racist abuse and threats and violence for their entire lives. I fully understand that many people don't feel that way. I wish no people felt that way. I understand that some people have only positive associations with the flag. It means only positive things, only national pride, and the hanging of the flag is therefore not inherently racist at all. In the early days of this last summer, many such people said that they enjoyed the sight of the national flag hanging from lampposts. And that's a valid view, that's a valid feeling. And now, I think, sadly, many flags look awful. They are dirty and torn and they've fallen down or are caught up in trees. And I think that neglect really undermines the sense of pride that they were meant to represent. But let's imagine, for argument's sake, that they were still pristine. There are still, I think, competing rights involved here because public spaces have to balance different kinds of expression. I personally enjoy playing obnoxious rock music and using language that would embarrass a dot worker, but not everyone's going to agree with that, so I tend not to do it on the bus. I know that is a light-hearted and slightly spurious comparison because we're talking about our national symbol, obviously, but I think the same principle applies. People have a right to express themselves in the public space, including their sense of national pride, and they also have the right to be free and express themselves and feel safe and included. And they have the right to express their views about when they don't. And because there are many British citizens having these negative reactions as well that range from discomfort to very real trauma-based threat and oppression. I've been contacted by loads of residents on this issue, some from global ethnic majority backgrounds, but many also white British people who also have a problem with it. And we ought to take the views of all those people who share the common space into account. I think part of the problem is that too much of the online discourse on flags is overly simplistic. I have lost count of the number of comments I've seen that say it's our national symbol and not racist. But a thing is made racist by the way it is used, not the thing itself. It can be both a symbol of national pride and of racist beliefs. So let's talk a little bit about who's behind some of this campaign. Operation Raise the Colours, which is the name of the nationwide flagging effort that started last summer, it sports a few different people claiming to be the founder. One such is Andrew Currian, a man formerly of the English Defence League, more recently of Britain First. He has previously been jailed for his part in a racist death. A separate group called Raise the Colours, slightly confusingly, also claims credit. One of the two co-founders of that group, Ryan Bridge, was the man I mentioned earlier who was arrested last week on suspicion of causing religiously and racially aggravated harassment, and is being pursued for an 8-year jail sentence in Spain over claims of fraud in an alleged holiday sickness scam and membership of a criminal group. The other bloke behind that group is Daniel Thomas, who is a close friend of Tommy Robinson. He was given a 2-year jail sentence in 2016 for an attempted kidnap at knife point. Both of those men have travelled to France to smash up boats they suspect may be used by migrants. They have filmed themselves harassing homeless black people, and they have more recently fallen out with each other and accusing each other of theft and fraud and misuse of the money that people have donated to Raise the Colours to buy flags. These are not people driving this campaign or taking donations for flags and putting them up as a good faith symbol of unity or patriotism, as they claim. That, of course, and I want to stress this, does not mean that everyone taking part shares those views, but it does raise questions about how and why this started and why these campaigns are being organised. Obviously, again, stressing this, not everyone who enjoys seeing the flag is similar to these men or even necessarily aware of them or their leanings. So I think that that's a factor to take into account, to acknowledge and discuss when talking to people who like the flag for genuine reasons of national pride. Because when you see some of this evidence that much of the organised effort between large and unauthorised flag displays does involve far-right people like that, and you see their beliefs and actions towards minoritized communities, it's a bit clearer why many people find it so threatening. And we have to weigh all of that in the balance against it being a national pride symbol, because it is common space. This debate often comes down to a difference between intent and impact. People may intend pride, but the impact can be very, very different for black and brown British people or any people who associate that display with intimidation and abuse. And it's why it's so important that we have this discussion with some depth and why all these views should be considered. And for me, that is the most British thing we can actually do. One of the things that the online discourse rarely gets into is the nuance of what it actually means to be British or what British values are. We talk about it a lot, but we rarely define it. We don't have an agreed set of written principles to refer to, so it's really nebulous and it means different things to different people. I think Brits believe in decency and politeness and everyone getting a fair shake. We appreciate a properly managed queue. And I think that most of us would agree British values include freedom of expression and pride in our country, and they also include consideration of others and a sense of fairness. In which case, I do want to consider what black and brown friends and neighbours and residents are telling me about what this means to them and about how it makes them feel unsafe. Because that consideration and that decency is, for me, as British as the flag. Now, in my experience, and from those who've contacted me, people are not asking that we never use the St George's Cross or the Union Jack, or that we disassociate ourselves from it as a nation. People are happy to see it when there's a context to it. Remembrance Day, sports events, jubilees and royal weddings, or garden parties or street parties. These are an invitation to community. These are circumstances in which the flag is used to invite people to come together. We hang out that bunting and we say, pull up a chair in the street and sit with your neighbours for a slice of cake. Or we raise the flag in solemnity and remember those who've sacrificed for us and are all dead. Or we drape ourselves in it and we say, come to the pub and watch the Olympics or the football. Those things are invites in that bring us together. And the context of the lamppost flags just feels very, very different. So to briefly turn to our political stance on this, the All In Party is a new party we established in April last year to bring an equality and inclusion lens to politics, following the closure of the Women's Equality Party, who I was initially elected for, and that closed in December 2024. All In firmly believes that people of all races and sexualities and classes and abilities and backgrounds and gender identities have and should have equitable rights and opportunities, and that makes society better for everyone in it. It's not just the right thing to do, it is the sensible thing to do for everyone's benefit. And I have made tons of content online explaining why, which you can find online, or I will happily send you links to if you're particularly interested in that. So I think it's natural that not only have we as a party discussed this issue internally, but also that people who have concerns have reached out to us since last year to find out what we might be doing or saying or thinking, because there often doesn't seem to be much coming from our mainstream parties. So we consequently made this topic part of our discussions at our inaugural annual policy forum last November. I have since been involved in spearheading the anti-hate rally in town in March with We Are Basingstoke, which is a new group. And I have contacted Hampshire County Council via several channels to express concern about the flags on behalf of myself as a resident, and also on behalf of the many residents who have contacted me as their borough councillor with similar concerns. At this time, Hampshire County Council say that they are not prepared to take any direct action against the flags, but they will remove the flags as routine maintenance happens, or in cases where they may cause danger, where they're falling down, if they might go onto a car or get in anyone's way, impede vision on roads or anything like that. Otherwise, that's the end of it. So unfortunately, because Hampshire are the Highways Authority, they have sole remit over the lampposts and highways furniture. So as a borough councillor, I don't have any further recourse for action. But if I ever am in that position, either as a county councillor or as a unitary authority councillor, when the borough and county authorities are merged, the election for that new unitary authority is next year in May 27, I will definitely be revisiting this issue. So to summarise, I am a proud British woman who is pro hanging the British flag in the correct context. I do not think that amateur lamppost hanging is the correct context, and I believe that while much of the motivation behind these displays genuinely comes from national pride, some of it is also divisive and it is about division, and we have to be honest about both. So if and when I am in a position to have a say, I will advocate for the removal of the unauthorised roadside flags and for the free and proud use of the flags at appropriate times and events, and crucially, when their care and proper maintenance is part of the project, to hang them properly and as proudly as they should be. As ever, I am happy to have a discussion with any resident who wants to get in touch with me on this. Usual email address is below, or wants to discuss it further. This is a tricky one, and it has been a long one, so thanks for watching.